What I'll do is I will stop sharing this presentation, and that way we can just talk face to face and we can get a conversation going. So what do you guys think? Let's have a few minutes of discussion. I think we've got a few minutes left. And I'm seeing lots of really interesting comments in the chat. Virginia, thank you for sharing so many amazing resources. Stigma Reduction resources by Irving Goffman. There's fantastic stigma reduction interventions out of the field of mental health. I love this. For me, I'm Indian. And so for me and my cultural paradigm, having a South Asian family working in South Asia, this idea of stigma is huge, and people actually will not seek help because, seeking help is seen, they correlate any sort of mental health issue with being crazy. And so that's a particular cultural paradigm. But let me know your questions. Like, if you have tactical questions about creating safe spaces, leveraging the power of communities, building movements online, let's talk about them. Questions? I'll just drink some water in the meantime. Let's talk about your aha moments. Nancy, I know you were asking me about how to create that aha. Let me know if that answered. So with the families of individuals facing addiction, there's a technology gap issue. Okay, let's chat about this. What is the gap? Are they not online? Do they have phones? Okay, a lot of individuals hardly have smartphones. Love this. This is like an interesting challenge. So traditionally, how are you reaching out to them? Are you using traditional media like newspapers, radio ads? How do they find you? How do they walk through your doors for your programs? And anyone else, feel free to ask a question. I'd especially like to know if what I was saying actually struck you, if it was valuable. Leave that commentary for me too. So in the case when people don't have smartphones, okay, that is the issue still. Yeah, Virginia is saying stigma and shame are super huge and super oppressive to well-being, regardless of the condition or situation. We need to define and address them in culturally sensitive ways. Literacy is a big issue too. I totally agree. Okay. Okay. Nancy says, we found individuals in the religious areas, but this is not a scalable model. Okay, let's chat about this. So no matter what is happening in terms of how you're finding people in physical space or religious spaces, beginning to build a cadre of message, like basically creating a space online where you can talk and share ideas for families dealing with addiction and people dealing with addiction is a good idea, because if they don't have phones now, the odds are, looking at the global trends, that eventually they're going to get them. So always a part of your work is going to be pounding the pavement and trying to find some spaces where people are. Now, if it's not religious institutions, I'll tell you what I used to do with my domestic violence organization. We went to like I worked for a South Asian domestic violence organization in North Carolina as a co-director. So we did a two-pronged approach. One is we were, this is the early days of Facebook. So we were online, we had a website, we used a Facebook page, and we just talked about the dynamics of abuse. We also visited schools and colleges and did talks, and we did guerrilla marketing campaigns. We put up flyers and stickers in places where people would see them when they were in private space. So what I'm really trying to say is, I would go to all the local businesses, especially South Asian businesses in my town in North Carolina, go into the bathrooms and put up stickers for my organization, telling them that they don't have to suffer in silence. The stickers basically said, you don't have to suffer in silence. Nobody deserves to be abused, with a hotline number. So for you, Nancy, twofold. One is spending some time and energy creating a space where you can have that scalable communication online. That could be an Instagram page or a Facebook page. You're gonna be able to reach some people there, okay? It may not be the same number of people that you reach typically because there is the smartphone issue, but some measure of people are gonna be dealing with opioid addiction and are gonna be reachable digitally. So think in that way. The second thing is, where are people gonna sneak and use, right? And if there's a stigma around using and being addicted, then the private spaces where you are finding people, aside from their homes, which you can't get into, unless you're able to get into places that they might frequent regularly, like barber shops, like supermarkets, like, just where normal people are. These places have not dissolved as much as the public square or the church. So where can you begin to reach out and do grassroots campaigning for these people? And these are two-pronged approaches. So you're not targeting families directly, you're targeting the people who meet the families. And then those people are transmitters of information, and it's an exponential effect. So this is how in my last organization, we combined the work of digital, of space convening, and we would oftentimes do counseling on email and chat, because our survivors were afraid to come forward and come into our physical space. But I do want to say that, I think it's important to make sure that you are, if you can't reach the people that are affected directly, reach the people who reach the people that are affected directly. So I hope that helps. So in some of these models, I know you can train doctors, you can train barbers, you can train people who run small businesses like supermarkets or the corner stores to look out for the signs of families in crisis and see whether they could serve to be deliverers of the message of where to find you. Maybe they have a stack of your pamphlets. So I'm not sure if that helps, but this is some of my ideation, but everyone else has great ideas. And Virginia has a fantastic idea about creating mutual learning circles. So that's great. But ping me, email me. I shared my email. I'm happy to think this through with you. And I'm happy, just come into my community on Facebook. Not to toot my own horn, but there's just other great people who can help ideate with you in a global sense. So Facebook also, I do want to say, runs these local circles of Facebook group admins. So if any of you guys are thinking about using Facebook groups, there's a program called Community Leadership Circles, which are local circles of Facebook group admins in one locality. So, Lisa's in Brisbane, and so if she wanted to start a Facebook group and she was the admin of a Facebook group, then she could join a local community leadership circle if there was one nearby and learn from other Facebook group admins, but leverage the exponential effect of their communities. So if you can't target people in your own community, and if you have to target people offline to have that effect to reach out to the people, then what you can do is network with as many digital communities as possible to talk about the opioid crisis, to share stories, to tell people how they can help people get help. And then that's how you build the movement. So It's a lot of work though, so happy to help you think through it. So Lisa's saying, as an older counselor, the digital space can seem overwhelming to me. Are there places I can access for getting a better understanding of how to be more visible, relevant in these spaces? I'm going to teach you one simple thing, although it's not as simple as that, to get you started. Just start sharing your thoughts and experiences online. Okay, whatever container you choose to do this, there's fantastic free blogging platforms like Medium. Twitter is still filled with journalists and intelligentsia. So if you're needing to reach that population, Twitter's still great for that. Instagram is for the younger population. And Facebook is still a place where there's discoverability. So just start share. I mean, it's called microblogging, but I want you to tell stories about your work, share what you've learned, talk about your experiences, because you have a wealth of information from your years of counseling, and your age works for you in this instance and allows you to reach into the depth of your oeuvre of work and to share with the world what you've seen and how you're connecting the dots. That's something that, like younger counselors can't really do because they have the knowledge, but they don't have the experience and the stories. Just start telling stories. Once you start telling stories, invite people to read them, invite people to look at them. Start, let's say you're doing it on Facebook and you create a page for yourself, okay? And then you invite people to like your page and you put yourself on a regular cadence of sharing your stories. So 1, start sharing stories. 2, start sharing stories and thoughts regularly. 3, invite people to read them and keep the conversation going. That is the easiest way to start. So, and we can talk more about level 2, but this is level 1. I helped somebody do this who's in my empathy and safe space community, and she wanted to talk about mindfulness and parenting, and she has just started sharing stories about raising her daughter, and I have seen that she has found her voice. And her name is Sneha, and if you come into the community, you can just look us up on Facebook. It's the Empathy and Safe Space. Let me just type it. Empathy, Safe Space, Mentoring. So if you come into the community, you'll see Sneha sharing stories about her life with her daughter and her thoughts. It's just her thoughts, but she's creating her own stream of thought leadership. And she started sharing regularly. She put herself on a regular cadence under sort of my guidance. And now she's creating a pathway for herself and beginning to go digital. So we can work more on this, but this is level 1 of this. Hopefully this helps. Lisa, let me know if this helps at all. So Jan works with sex offenders, highly stigmatized population. I'm developing a sex offender treatment program and have had a very difficult, lots of comments, this is great. Very difficult time reaching offenders to communicate that these services are available. I'm curious about how to reach sex offenders, considering that many of them do not have access to the internet, cannot use social media, or go to many public places. The stigma is paralyzing for these individuals. Jan, go to the police and go to the courthouses. You've got to work directly with judges, and you've got to work directly with police and parole officers here. So in my work in North Carolina, I saw some of these treatment programs, not for sex offenders, but for abusers, and that is the way. So we had a liaison in our organization, the Durham Crisis Response Center, who worked directly with men in jail, and he worked with men as they were getting out of jail and then coming into parole. So for this, you've got to access directly the social justice system. And I know that this is like, I totally agree with you. It's so stigmatized, it'll be hard to go and reach them digitally, but I want to reiterate the advice that I gave to Lisa is that you, as an individual working with this population, you're not stigmatized because you're applying your expertise to help solve the problem. So your voice matters, your story sharing matters, your thoughts on this matters, your take on healing matters. And that is going to help destigmatize, and that's going to help you reach out to people. Because believe it or not, even though many of them are not on the internet, somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody is going to see your work and your stories, and they're going to be able to find you. So I hope that helps. So one is you've got to do the offline work. There's no way around that. But the second way is to start telling your stories around this work, because you're protected socially, right? And so I'm not saying that you should only do it because you're protected socially, but you should think about it in the way that you're creating a momentum of thought leadership and a pathway for people to access more information so that there is more awareness around this, because not very many people know about working with sex offenders. So talk about what you know in your own work. Then you will be able to find pathways for, if you're doing your job well and telling your stories well, they're gonna find you. The ones that can find you will find you. And then you can start asking them questions. Like, my favorite form of discovery is to ask people. So currently for my program at Facebook, we're thinking about building an alumni program for community leaders. Today in the Facebook group, I asked them, hey, what do you want to see in an alumni program? Rather than scratching my head about, well, we should develop this, and we should do this, and we should do this because other alumni programs, I was like, hey, what do you guys want to see? So you only need two. You need one to ask, and then you need one more person to ask, and then you can act. If you guys are, and this is not typically a set of conversations that we have on our side of the work, social work, counseling, but I want you to look up Lean Startup. I'm typing in some things, the community. So these are some resources that can help you, oops, misspelled community. The Lean Startup methodology is an iterative process where you can develop ideas better, and it's focused on a business, but you can use Lean Startup methodology for anything that you're trying to launch. So I would urge you to, there's a book called The Lean Startup, but you can easily find explanations of Lean Startup online. This is how we can develop services that are iterative. I urge you, when you're thinking about digital spaces and convening digital communities, everything is iterative. Nothing's going to be perfect before you launch it. You know, you can come with a whole bunch of curriculum and a learning pathway, but the way people respond, what you're creating, how you become flexible, how you change your community for people is going to be an iterative process. So these things will help. The Community Canvas is a tool that helps you map out your own community and your stakeholders. And it can, it can help you think about monetizing. Like, let's say that you start telling your stories and then you become a thought leader. Well, you can make money from that. Right? So you can not only make money from your one-on-one clients, but you can make money from your thought leadership. The Community Canvas can help you do that. So hope this was helpful. Let me know, because I'm just riffing here. Catherine's working to reduce foster care stigma in Texas by sharing positive stories and verified facts and stats. I think it's important to stop telling children that foster children are likely to fail. Yeah. Totally agree here, as it steals hope from those who enter care. The focus on negative stories also prevents many good families and volunteers from getting involved. I had a graduate intern research to ensure that it is working. It's just quite tedious, as sharing positive truths doesn't catch as much attention as one terrible story. So yeah, totally agree. So like the overwhelming push of this like negative news here can completely like eclipse what you're doing. But even for you and for Nancy, putting a face on children that have been in the system that are now successful, thriving adults is super important. And you will have to basically flood your platforms. Remember, I said 7 times of exposure, the mind changes, right? So for every negative story, you've got to put out 7 positive stories. But if I see a woman that looks like me that's been in the foster care system, and I say, wow, okay, like I have so many negative perceptions about children that grow up in the foster care system, but look at her. Like, that's what you got to do. And I think that you can exploit the loudest voices in the room that have been through the system and that can tell their story well. For these types of stories, video is going to work really great. You know, an interview series on Instagram TV, Facebook Lives with successful, thriving people that have been through the system, I think would be great. Parents that believe in supporting children who are in foster care. Why do they do it? Sharing their stories. The more stories you put out, the more you're going to be able to eclipse this. It is a slow game here. Content creation, building momentum around content, getting people to plug in is a slow game. Virality, like I said, Tarana Burke said, we think that the Me Too movement went viral. And like, it was a few days and then the hashtag went viral around the world. She'd been doing the work for 10 years. She's been doing the work with survivors of sexual violence for 10 years. And it would just reach this tipping point, just like bamboo grows. It grows silently under the ground, and then all of a sudden it shoots up. That is the dynamics of a movement, is that there's a lot of things that you don't see, that big level of the iceberg that is underneath the water. So keep putting it out there, and eventually it is going to catch on. Somebody's going to change their mind. And then maybe you can ask the people that are engaging with your stories, hey, did this story change your mind today? And get their quotes and testimonials, and then start telling their stories. Then you're showing both sides of the coin. The people that are proving that those statistics, those perceptions are not true, and the people who used to think that way and no longer do. But I think in this case, you can easily exploit video and share that. I would love to see stories like that, because I think that could be super, super powerful. Awesome, you guys are sharing such great ideas. Cynthia says, since retiring, this is an important way for me to share positive over negative, thinking about doing a blog or Facebook page. Yes, and so I don't know if there's a way for all of us to stay connected, or if Social Work Helper will share our information together, but the best way to do this is to test it with other practitioners of safe space creation and counseling and empathy. So feel free to use us as the original test community, and we can help each other refine message. I'm certainly up for that task. So you guys can hit me up and say, hey, Avni, I created this space. Let me know what you think of it, and I'll give you my honest opinion. Will we have access to this presentation? I'd like to share it with my colleagues. Yeah, I think this is recorded, so I think that you can share it. Lovely. Jan, thank you. I've had a very hard time finding parole and probation officers specifically working with offenders. And you may not find those specialists, but that relationship building piece, you being present at the police stations, might take some fruit or a edible arrangement or some Mo nuts. Because I think you're in North Carolina. I'm not sure if you're in Raleigh or Durham, but or some other city. But any of those great sort of ways to build relationship. You just sort of need to start creating that pipeline. So even if there's not specialists, they should be thinking of you whenever they do have an offender, right? So once you make your presence known and they identify you as the woman who cares and works with sex offenders, I think that you'll start to see positive momentum in getting referrals to you. Hopefully that makes sense. Awesome, you guys. There's gonna be an evaluation. Cool, please evaluate this and then tell me if I did a good job or a crappy job. Okay, Nancy, I'd really appreciate a live dialogue consult with you about pushing this out. My Facebook page is Families Turning. Okay, cool. I'm writing this down and I'm gonna find you. Catherine says, thank you. I'll keep working to get the many strong, resilient former foster youth to tell their stories. Yeah, and like find the people whose opinions have changed, because I think there's gonna be people whose opinions have changed, and you can look in the circle of those former foster youth and just like see whether you can have them send out a message to friends and family that says, listen, Catherine is looking for stories about how your mind changed about kids in the foster care system. Are you willing to share your story? Dude, stories are so powerful. Yes, Nancy, stories are money, and stories are the basis of community. Back in the day when we were cave women, we were sitting, cavemen and cave women, because I know we have some gentlemen watching this, but I see a lot of women, so I just want to shout out. We were telling stories to